silence. I know. You will not stay silent.
Ooh, boy.
I
We
remember
are
that
live.
we had a thing at school where this was grammar school, I think, so secondary school, and as a whole class were lined up, and he said, "Right, you've been very noisy, so be silent." And we were made to be silent for 2 minutes, and then the teacher said, "Okay, make as much noise as you want," and we all went and made no noise because nobody wanted to be first or something. I don't know. It's all psychological. Anyway, I know we're live. Sorry, everyone.
That was a good
okay.
story.
You're
Yeah.
allowed to
Prime
cut this
content.
out.
A little behind the scenes chatter.
A little behind the scenes. Start view into Gerald's life.
All
It's a long one.
right.
Oh, okay.
This is Literary Roadhouse. One short story once a week. I'm Anise.
I'm Gerald.
And I'm Andy.
I guessed then. I didn't know. You didn't
I was
tell
going to
me.
say, is Gerald going to remember?
Yeah,
All right.
of course not. No
No.
idea.
Okay. This week we read The Gilded Six Bits by Zora Neale Hurston, a short story published in 1933 and a classic American short story. The story is set in the early 1930s in the United States' first all-black town, Eatonville, Florida, a real place founded in the aftermath of the Civil War and the childhood home of Zora Neale Hurston. Missy May and Joe are a young couple, 1 year into marriage and happily in love. Joe works for a fertilizer company and dotes on his beautiful wife. One day, there's a newcomer in town, Mr. Otis D. Slemons of Spots and Places, Memphis, Chicago, Jacksonville, Philadelphia, and so on. I love that, Spots and Places. Joe is impressed by Slemons, a black man who wears a gold coin that hangs from his watch chain and who has enough money to be fat like a rich white man. Missy May is less easily impressed at first and assumes Slemons is all talk. But after a few weeks, Joe discovers Missy May having an affair with Slemons. The men, Joe and Slemons, have a physical altercation and Joe tears off the gold coin. A distressed and sobbing Missy May says that Slemons kept after her and promised her the gold coin. Joe doesn't physically leave the marriage, but he does emotionally leave. Over the next few months, he keeps the gold coin as a specter of the betrayal. When he and Missy May finally couple once again, he leaves the gold coin under her pillow as if to say he could buy her too. He doesn't say it explicitly, but she knows. And she discovers that all along it was just a gold-plated $50, nothing more. Shortly after, Missy May becomes pregnant, and after the birth of their son, Joe manages to find a way to truly forgive her and buys her molasses kisses as a treat, as he had done every weekend before the affair. Okay.
And they all lived happily
What did you guys
ever
think of
after.
the story?
I liked it. I don't normally like this. I don't normally like stories with too much dialect written down.
Right. Phonetic dialect is typically a big turnoff for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I get it, but it's often used meanly.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess it's authentic. It's trying to be authentic. It's trying to tell the story from from one person's point of view. So it's I suppose they think that it's authentic to say, to write the dialogue in the sort of dialogue that they would use. But it's not easy reading sometimes, and I find myself putting the accent on in my head, which makes me a little bit uncomfortable. But there you go, gets me through it.
But you both said normally, so did it also bother you here or not as much here?
I had to
Initially,
consciously
yes.
remind myself, like, no, this is like authentically capturing the tone of a place from a person who lived there. It's not an
I see.
outsider
So your modern
looking
sensibilities
in.
were like, if this was like a modern author writing about
Right.
this who was not of that culture, you'd be like, eh. But because
Right.
it's Zora Neale
Watch it.
Hurston, then it changes it.
But I had to, like, it did still pull me out of the story a lot. I wouldn't say it bothered me in itself, but it pulled me out of the story a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, yes,
yeah.
and I did. Normally, I find anything that slows or stops or makes the reading hesitate, like a sudden foreign language word with no context. So I have no idea what it means, and you have to look it up, and it stops the flow. I like stories with flow. So yeah, initially this is we're going to have to struggle with this, but I did find that putting the accent on as I was reading in my head, it made it better. So I could read read along in the style of. So yes, so that's something to. But yeah, I did feel uncomfortable doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it when you put it in sort of the context of when this was published as well, I wonder if like there just weren't that many stories that were even capturing these experiences authentically from an insider, and that in itself was probably very much like, whoa, like this whole like I can hear it and it feels alive. Because the first time I read it, I was a little distracted by dialect, but the second time I just went with it and did the whole voice in my head and just didn't wonder about whether or not I should be uncomfortable, just went for it. And it was so much more charming, especially in the honeymoon phase when you hear that cadence and they're flirting. That part is so light and charming, and the accent I think helps with the flirtation. Like it helps get across like what they're doing, which was very cute.
It's amazing to think that it was written in or published in 1933, and what the black community were doing around that time, and what having done to them, and to have this story published must have been something amazing in itself.
Yeah. And then you have all of that context. You have all of the, racial realities in America, especially at that time. But then at the heart of it, it's this marriage story. And like we have so many marriage stories, right? But like this is like a really, right? Like it's a marriage story that happens in a particular way because of a particular context. Poverty keeps coming up. How impressed they are by this celebrity. Well, Joe, really. The part where Joe is like, he's so much better than me. And Missy May's like, he's not. And he's like, no, but he is. He's so much better. I'm like, Joe, what are you doing? Joe, stop. Joe, don't convince your wife the Slevins is the catch. And she's trying to resist that. But anyway, like all of that context is there. But at the heart of it, it's an affair. It's the breaking down of the marriage and then forgiveness and, moving on. Like, and that's like, I don't know. There's a lot of different versions of that out there in literature and in media, and I like this one as well. I thought it was pretty.
Yeah, it has an innocence about it in the way that they flirted and the simple things that he did for her, and so you can understand that when she started her affair, how it would cut him to the quick, how it would affect him so strongly, and how he struggled to deal with that, I think. And not knowing whether to leave her or to just get on with things. So I think it did that nice sort of, he pulled away from her until she got pregnant, and once he realized that the child was his, then he could sort of come back to her fully then, which I thought was good. It was a good ending. I liked that.
And it says a lot about like Joe's character. Like normally you would expect like something a bit more dramatic or melodramatic, and it just felt very real and mature. And then there's all these other pressures as well to keep the marriage together, right? Like she at one point wants to leave and then runs into Joe's mother, and it's like she wants this marriage to fail. Guess I'm going back. And then there's that line about like even if the substance of the marriage isn't there, she'll make it look like it is so, and they just kind of go through the motions until the other stuff catches up. Yeah.
Yeah, it's what was I going to say? And also you got a clue as to certainly Joe's lack of education, and so from his job, which sounds an awful job, and but he does it day in day out diligently, and his inability to sort of deal with the affair in any way other than just to sort of withdraw and try and sort it out in a head. So it's the very, very poor, dirt poor, literally dirt poor. It's authentic. So that's how people lived. I'm guessing.
Yeah. And there's just really nice turns of phrase, like when he walks in on the affair, the great belt on the wheel of time slipped and eternity stood still, or later, the other time when I liked the hours went past on their rusty ankles.
I was just looking at that bit that I'd highlighted too.
Yeah.
And finally, the sun's tide crept upon the shore of night and drowned all its hours. That's just, that's nice writing.
Yeah.
That fills you up.
Yeah.
That's Zora Neale
good,
Hurston.
Stick to your bones writing.
I think she'll go somewhere. This is one of like her first, like she was a newcomer, but yeah. There's a lot of just great lines.
We done fixed her with the sugar and lard to sweeten her for the next one.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I also like in the very beginning when it was just describing the house, I hadn't yet fully grabbed like the cadence of this, and it was actually hard for me to follow initially. Like there was just something about like stopping and starting, and then once I came through and I kind of got used to the cadence and reread it, it was so smooth, which was interesting. This happens a lot with novels, right? Where like the first chapter you're like getting used to, if an author has like a very particular voice, you're like getting used to like how they write, and then after a while you're like, okay, it's faster now. That happened to me in the beginning here. Just simple lines where I was like, why is this so hard for me? Like the words all make sense, but something's not quite absorbing. And then once I got the cadence down, it was really smooth. Yeah.
I think cadence is a really good and helpful word for that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because it's not right. It's just what is the intuitive rhythm of it.
Yeah, exactly. And if you don't get that intuitive rhythm right away, there's like the stopping, starting, even if the sentence itself is a sentence that it makes sense, you're like, right? Like you struggle to absorb it.
Yeah. And the rhythm of the writing within the sentence was nice too. It was a very enjoyable read. She's a very, very good writer. This lady.
Yeah. Yeah. And the characters are charming. Like they're fundamentally good people despite the affair. You know what I mean? Like you're rooting for them throughout, even at the low point.
Oh, yeah. Definitely. Yeah, it was sort of heartbreaking to hear that she'd had an affair with Slemons.
Well, even Slemons is such a genuine bad guy liar. Like he's just it's like, yeah, that's okay. That's the guy you'd be, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your fake gold and your and your
right,
stories.
But not not some melodramatic mustache twirler. Just like he's like the real nice sort of homegrown level of philanderer.
Yeah, just philanderer, con man. Just goes around lying, leaves town before everything catches up to him. Or as soon as it does catch up.
Right. It's like just a very wholesome con.
Yes.
That, timey hurts people.
Yeah.
There's something very pastoral about it, right?
Right. That's what I'm getting. Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Even the bad guy fits in. Yeah.
And it's also charming that the arrival of an ice cream parlor can bring such excitement to the town. It's their Saturday night treat to go to the ice cream store.
Yeah.
Ice cream parlor.
Yeah. Funny. And it's funny because like throughout the story, there's really no white characters until the very, very, very end when he goes to Orlando, when he goes to the market and he gets the molasses kisses. And the guy says, the clerk says to the next customer, who I'm assuming is white based on what he says, wish I could be like these Starkeys, laughing all the time, nothing worries him, which is so great after like this whole thing. And it doesn't have to be heavy hand. Like it feels like authentic. God, it's like one of those things where you're like, you're not supposed to say that, even if in the universe of things you could have said, it could have been worse, I guess. Like it has this like very authentic, real place and time. You know that guy, you know that clerk, and you sit there, and then if it's your daddy or grandpa, you're like, but you don't say anything because you're like, all right, I guess technically it was positive by his standards. You know what I mean? Like there's this, there was something about that line which is like, okay, I like that she captured that in one line. Didn't have to like belabor this throughout the whole story. It's like right there at the end. And you're like, yeah.
Yeah, and at the end too, when he's talking to the guy and said, "How'd you get it? Did he fool you too?" So who, me? No, didn't fool me.
Yeah,
I thought, I sent him packing. Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The pride.
Again, that's that pride and that self pride to not admit things that have gone badly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It just feels
was
very
nice.
real throughout, and you enjoy the characters, and then it's wrapped up. It's what a short story should be. Actually, it's got all the everything just there, and it's perfect, and the ending makes sense. It has a great arc. The writing's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's well done.
And and the opening sets the scene and introduces the main characters, and you're within a paragraph or two. You know exactly where you are and who they are. So yeah, it's exactly right for a short story, just to get into the story as quickly as possible.
Mhm.
Nice.
Andy, is this a good thing or a bad thing for you, being from Chicago? When Joe says, "Didn't I say old Otis was swell? Can he talk Chicago talk?" Is this good or bad?
Well, I think it's funny,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because like he's talking Chicago talk, and it's only slightly elevated of the same dialect they're using, right? Like, oh, he's got them real fancy Chicago words.
Yeah. Wasn't it funny when he said, what was it? Great big fat old Ida Armstrong. Who is that broad with the 40 shake? Sometimes he says 38 and 2, which means 40. Joe. Joe, please.
38 and 2 instead of 40.
So
Get
clever.
it?
Oh
He's
my
the
God.
cleverest.
Mhm.
No, I thought it was a delight, and I thought, how neat. God, do we have time? Do we have time for a stupid tangent?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Always.
I think it's Anatomy of a Murder. I don't remember the film. It's the classic scene where the guy goes, "Well, I'm no big city lawyer, or I'm no fancy attorney from the big city of Lansing," and that sticks with me all of the time.
And that's
When
and it reminds you of that. This reminds
it
you of
reminds me of this, right? Well, and that like they went to Chicago, and I love Chicago, and I think it's the best city in the world. But also like New York is right there for the referencing, right? As a fancy city.
Mhm.
Like, oh, you could reference New York, or you can reference Chicago, I guess.
Mhm.
And
I
just
mean,
like how
Chicago's legit.
but it's like how high does your ceiling go, right?
Right.
Mm.
Right.
Right. What's the biggest city you can imagine? Lansing.
Right. Yeah.
And so it felt like that. It felt like that. It was fun to see Chicago in the Lansing of it all.
Yeah.
It's funny, Gerald. This Lansing is not a big city.
I guess that much.
It's not. Also, I believe that the
He's
guy
picking
who
it
was
'cause that's
saying
where I
that
live.
line had studied at Harvard, and was just, I'm just a simple country lawyer, not from the big city of Lansing.
Yeah. I was gonna say, people getting excited. We did get a new bakery downtown.
Whoa,
People talked
baby.
about it because there aren't that many. Yes.
Wow.
You will notice. Yeah.
A delightful
Which
new
is
cocktail
nice.
bar
Having grown up
just
in the New
opened.
York area, I wouldn't notice if something new was opening here. As soon as something new is opening, first of all, everyone's talking about it. And you do notice. You're like, well, what's this? It's a never had before. I love it.
Well,
Excitement.
for all of our listeners in the Chicago area, you should check out the delightful new cocktail bar, Dearly Beloved, in River North. My sister-in-law just opened up.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. I'll give her a plug on my.
Give her a plug.
Wow.
Why not?
It's gonna take off, and she owes it all to you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anything else we want to say?
Don't think so. Not for me, anyway.
Okay. Shall we rate it and talk about next week's story?
Shall we rate it?
Yeah.
Let's.
That's
Coming
what
in
we
at a
do.
solid 5, nice and easy.
Yeah, I was going to. That's what I've just written down. I thought, yeah, solid 5.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, I have to agree, and then we just all agree.
Wow. See, that's the problem. See,
Right,
the
it's a
good
nice,
thing
good
about
5.
I know. We're like the story was great, cool.
Yeah.
Because of our modern sensibilities, we don't like doing the dialects in our heads, I guess. But that's on us. That's not on Zora
Right.
Neale Hurston, who grew up in Eatonville in the 30s. So that's for
Yeah.
us to process.
Yeah.
And good story. Next time, let's read something divisive. Yeah.
Wow.
Okay.
Don't know if
Gerald,
next
what are
time-
we reading next week?
And make
Next
it
week we're-
divisive.
I can't make it something it may not be. It's 3,000 over 3,000 words, so maybe that's divisive. I don't know. It's one word by Tabena Nwosu.
I thought you said it was 3,000 words.
Okay.
You are in some mood today, aren't you?
All day.
Little pixie.
All morning. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We should start publishing some behind the scenes. Just be like, this is when Gerald and I suffer.
Yeah. Yes. Andy's
Sorry,
on one. Uh-oh. You get no sense out of him today.
Don't call me Shirley.
Okay. Before you go, parade your fine wife around in our Facebook discussion group, the Literary Roadhouse Readers. We also don't have any gold money. Keep this podcast going by leaving a review of Literary Roadhouse wherever you get your podcasts and supporting us on patreon.com/Literary Roadhouse. Every bit helps. And as always, share this podcast with the mother-in-law rooting for your downfall. Until next time, read a good story. Hello. Someone said hi. Okay.
Hi.
Bye.